All right, I'm now at part 2 of this first lecture about 300, and this is about flat space. And I'm using the example here, I'm starting off with the example of this is a print that Miller made with Varley. And what I want to point out in this is the kind of what I want you to see is look at the folds of Leonidas' cloak. Because what Miller is capable of, he's very good at, is creating these silhouettes and creating a silhouette which reads and is descriptive of what the character is doing, what the character's body is doing, is very tough. It's a real skill. I mean, some people really get it. They see the gestalt of the character and they're like, bing, they can put it up there, they can do it. And you get exactly what's going on. There's another artist who does this. His name is Risso, Eduardo Risso, who often works with Azzarello, and they did 100 Bullets together, and they're now doing a series called Moonshine together. Anyway, Risso is astonishingly good at this. He just is a master of. He'll just fill in the character. The character's envelope, as of the drawing, will be mostly black, so you don't have any definition. No, you can see here on my. Okay, it's all backwards, but you can see here on my shirt, or, the light on one side, dark on the other. Makes us our eyes see this as a ripple in the material. Okay, but with the silhouette, you just flatten all that out. It just becomes all black. Well, if you look at this, is why I'm calling this flat space. If you look at the Leonidas, he's mostly dark, right? There's no definition inside the body. It's there's the shield, which is called a hoplon, HOPLON, which is the name of this particular round shield, and which is why these guys were called hoplites, because of the shield, and they have these spears which were tipped with bronze, and these red cloaks. Otherwise, what we see from the side is Leonidas' head with his beard. Like, that's it. You need to know that's a beard. So you're like, what is that? Is that his nose? Or what's that supposed to be? So, in other words, you have to recognize, here's this guy standing presumably on a point of rock, an edge, a cliff, something like that, and the moon is behind him. All that's been done by Lynn Varley. So everything that is in color was painted by Lynn Varley. Everything else that's black and white, which is the least part of it, is Miller's work. So that means if you just isolate the folds of cloth, you'll see that if you go right down to it, you'll see that it's really just a red bar, a black bar, a red bar, a black bar, a red bar. That's all it really is. That's what the stripes are. So when you begin to look at it that way, your eye flattens it out and says, well, this is actually not material at all. So this is the thing about looking at the way that Miller uses flat space, and he uses it a lot. But he's also very good at making your eyes see, even though he's flattening things out, deliberately flattening things out, he makes your eyes see depth in the flatness. Very interesting. So this is the technique he uses. So in this next piece, we've got Stelios, who will, of course, become a very important figure, as we know, in really any film, especially any character who has a name, is probably going to play an important role. There just is not enough time in a film to give small roles. If it's badly written, there's no time to give small roles attention, because it's going to take attention away from the star or whatever. The hero, the stupidest person on the planet. Okay. So in this case, we've got Stelios, who is now falling down the hillside, and we see the reactions of the men, and that has all been organized so that it's diminishing. So that from the left side of the page, we see the men reacting. Stelios, you clown, and Leonidas beginning to watch. And at the very center of the page, because it's this is the left side of a double page spread, is Leonidas. And it's a little small Leonidas. So here's Leonidas just watching, and he's observing what use is this guy going to be to me, if any, right? and he will be enormously useful. And you have to look at the very end of the book. So there are all the reactions, and we see Stelios from the side, almost to a point where he's almost not 3D. I mean, he is, but the drawing is it's some of it doesn't read. It's like if you look at his knees, look at the knee. We can see the back leg, well, the leg that's in front. Basically, you can see his sandal, and so on the back of the calf. But the other leg has not been delineated at all. It's just it's essentially a silhouette of a knee. So if that odd blocky shape, it's like, what is that? It's like if that doesn't read, then this drawing isn't going to work. It's like that's actually the back of the other knee, the front of the other knee, and you can see the heel of the second leg behind it. And then there's this sort of cartoony, well, this is a cartoon after all, edge of the rocks. So there's no definition on the rocks. But then we see the men, from above, we're looking at Leonidas from below. We're looking at what happens, when he lands. It's already happened, and they're kicking him. We see him from the side. He's getting beaten up. We got a close up of a fist, hitting him, and so on. So, in all of this, as if this weren't enough to sort of make it hard, like what is going on? So here he is falling. Is this arrow, which is literally a gold bar right through the figure? It's amazing that he actually pulls this off. He draws a diagonal line through, and the whole thing is pointing down anyway, right? Because of the diminishing size of the panels, because of the character falling down, everything is pointing down towards Leonidas. Okay, but then there's also a literal arrow. It's like, here we go. Here's a spear in case your eye missed it. You should be focusing down here. It's impossible for the eye to look past that. It's completely flat. It seems to be sort of a beam of light or something like that. So what's going on here? It's like, well, part of it is just to force the eye to look down in case we missed it. Because sometimes we have all kinds of theories about composition, but sometimes people don't look where you want them to look. So, if you really want to push the reader around, and Miller really does want to push the reader around, it's like, look here. And so here's one of these techniques. So this is an example of flat space. Then we've got the next page, the right-hand side, and this time the images are growing, right? So this is the way the thing is going to progress. So there's this still point, the action happens, and then it stops down at the bottom, and then it begins to grow, and then we're going up the hill, right? And it's at this point that Leonidas will decide whether or not Stelios is useful or whether he should be killed. Or they should just get rid of him. And so he says, you will carry him on your back, because the captain doesn't understand what... so Leonidas is judging the way the captain behaves and so on. Okay. If we pull back again and we look at this, we see a huge V. It's like, okay. So again, looking at the figure ground, we see that this is a big light V over the dark ground, and we're pointing at the moment of decision early on. So this is pages 6 and 7, where Leonidas is going to come to a decision about who is going to serve him when it comes time to call for a particular... He's going to need a soldier. He's going to need a warrior, basically. He's going to need a prize warrior, and he's going to call on Stelios, and that's just how Stelios' name is going to be remembered, right? Okay. In the next page that I'm looking at, 62, which is the second day, This is a somewhat easier example of flat space, flat shape designing, where we see only the silhouettes of the Persians in the background, and we know they're Persians because of the way that they're dressed, essentially. So as I say, Miller has to make these silhouettes read. Like, you have to look at this and go, "Oh, that's a soldier," as opposed to like, "What is that? Is that some kind of ant? Like, is that are these bugs or something? Is this some kind of massive like science fiction alien invasion?" So we know from the whips and so on that the whips are used by Persians. The Spartans are free men, and so on. Okay, fine. They actually had slaves, but we'll let that go for the moment. So if we follow the way that Miller wants us to read, we come in from the left. Okay, well, that's normal. Normally we would read in a zigzag pattern in the West, right? We would read in a zigzag pattern starting on the left. So we would read from left to right, and then zigzag down to the next panel and read from left to right. If you're reading a line of type, it's a series of, if you're reading a page of type, it's a series of zigzags. Okay, it's one actually. In the East, the Japanese read the other way, from our back to the front, our front. So they would start the book at the back for us, and they read from the right to left and down. Okay, fine. It's fine. These are just different modes. But so in this case, Miller is again calling on these kinds of, well, what does the West do and what does the East do? And he's calling on the East here. So everything on the top frame points us out of the page. And this is where the action is all going. And then, so we would read it, if we're reading the way we read, we would read whips crack and so on. Those behind us cry forward. And so there's a push, right, in one direction. Then instead of coming over back to the left-hand side of the page, we would go down. So we would come down to the man with the helmet, one of the Spartans, read, "Those in front cry back the second day." And then the line of the spear carries us out the left side of the page. So we make a big U through the page, which is very interesting. So again, Miller is trying to take a hold of the reader's expectations and revise them, mostly because Miller wants to slow people down in the reading. I mean, it took him a year to make this book, and he doesn't want somebody taking a half an hour to read it. It's like, no, you got to go back and read it and read it and read it. And that means you have to slow down. You can read it the first time just to see what happens in the story. But after that, the idea is to go back and look again.